Hello and welcome to the second part of our online architectural ARCHLine.XP courses, during which we are going to look at a two-story family building and we are going to add its roof and other roof elements. My name is Zoltán Tóth, partner manager of ARCHLine.XP and your CAD and modeling enthusiast. I can't wait to show you the things that you can use to create a very elaborate documentation and model of this nice family house. So let's review what we looked at last time. So last time what we did is we created the first two floors of this building using an existing line work, and we created the first floor, the ground floor as well. We added the railing, we added the slab parts, but the thing that we are missing very badly is the roof itself. So that's what we are mainly going to look at today, but we are also going to look at other roof components, meaning rain gutters, solar panels as well. And one thing what I just realized we're missing is the columns, so we are going to look at that too. During the show, if you have any questions, I urge you to ask them. And in fact, there's a couple of questions that were submitted after last webinar that we had yesterday. And let's just start the show by talking about these things, because I think they are important to the topics that we are going to cover today. So first of all, there was a question about it's fine that we can create three-dimensional wall elements from existing line work, but how do we create walls from scratch? So that's the thing what I'm going to very quickly demonstrate here with an empty ARCHLine.XP project. So first of all, when you are creating a wall, just like I did yesterday, you go to the building wall menu. And if you click on this, you have a set of styles you can choose from. I'm just going to use the one layer 38 thick wall. And what I have to do, I just click and drag my mouse and type in the value based on which the wall is going to be created, just like that. So just keep on clicking and the wall would be created. You can use very standard CAD workflow to add the values, just like that. And if you, for instance, want to connect this and that point, then you just have to hold the shift key and close to another angle. So that was one thing I haven't mentioned yesterday, but that's how you create walls. And if you want to create a partition wall, for instance, with a different thickness, then you don't have to copy this wall and change its thickness value. Instead, you just go to wall and you just go with the 10 wide wall and you just add it like that. So that's the basic idea in terms of creating walls. So that was a very important question that was submitted yesterday. I think we had to cover that. There was another question about what happens with the drafting tools, what happens with two-dimensional lines, and that is something I'm going to talk about today, so you don't have to worry about that. But there was a third question which I think is very important to cover, and that is, we didn't see layers being manually created and layers being managed. So what happens with the layers? Now let's talk about that quickly. So I briefly touched upon this yesterday, but ARCHLine.XP comes with a layer set. So all these layers that I see over here, even though I don't have that many things to justify these many layers, these are all the layers that are generated by default when the software is opened. If I want to filter down all these layers to the ones I actually use right now, I go to use layers and I see that now only have two layers, a load-bearing wall layer and a partition wall layer. Let's close this down for a second. What happens if I add in an additional element? Let's say I want to add a slab. And if I do that, and I hit enter, remember we did this yesterday, so I'm not going to touch upon again how to create a slab. So if we do that, and I go back to the layer manager, I see that the slab layer is created. So that's a very simple and automated way. Every time you put down an architectural element, a layer is created. Now, what happens if you want to modify the default settings? Let's say I have this rectangular piece and I want to put this onto a customized layer. What happens then? I go to my layer manager, I go to all layers, and here I create an additional layer, and this is going to be a custom layer. I'm naming it now. So this layer is currently empty, there's nothing on it, so I'm just going to hit OK. Select the rectangle what I want to move onto this layer, go to the property grid, and I'm just going to go to custom layer. That's right. So now this element is moved to a custom layer. Let me demonstrate how that could be shown. If I go to the layer walk, which is an amazing tool with which you can quickly filter down what you want to show, I can enable and disable the content of this layer. So just an answer to this question, you can create layers manually in addition to the layers that the software creates, and then you can rename them, the layers, you can modify them, you can put things onto these layers, as you want. But I'm not going to go into this any further because we are going to show this in action. And now let's return to the topic, and the first thing that we are going to create today is going to be the roof. Now, the roof we haven't really touched upon before, so let me just quickly brush through how this works. So going back to the software, we are just going to look at the drawing that we have. Sorry, the other window is the one where we are working. And I want to have a roof over here, but for that I need to have some kind of ceiling. Now, ARCHLine.XP does come with a ceiling tool, so you could be using that for a suspended ceiling, but that's not what we need. We need to have an architectural element, a slab over here. So how do we do that? First of all, we have to select the slab. See, this is what happens if you have multiple elements on top of each other. I try to select the slab, but I can't do it because there's a wall above it, so I just have to use this quick jump list. Now the slab is selected. So what I do, I go to the copy objects to another floor, and I'm just going to copy this slab onto the loft floor over here. Hit OK. And now the slab is copied one floor up. But there's several problems with this. First of all, I don't need this hole over here, so let me just quickly amend that. I'm going to select my slab, go to the context menu, this little, let me just show you again, this little arrow over here, and I go to the hole menu, and I go with delete hole, and the hole is now gone. Now, next thing, this slab is way too thick and its position is not really good, so I'm just going to change that. I go to the properties, and I know that the height should be, let me just use my cheat sheet. The height is minus 100 millimeters, and the base elevation should be minus 300. And also, so you see now it's nicely tied in. I like how this is working and this is going. So I'm just going to the design center, and I'm going to look for another material because this parquet is not good for here. Let's go with concrete. This is going to be good. Yeah, we already showed you how to do this. I'm not really fond of this material, so let me just find something else which looks better for my purposes. Concrete number 3, that one's good. Okay, so next thing, I have to highlight this slab and align it with the walls. But here's the problem. Now I am on the loft floor, and I can't really see what's underneath. True, I can use the page up and page down keys to navigate between the floors, but I need to have an underlay under this floor. So I'm just going to go to my floor manager and turn on the visibility of the floor just below me. Now, here's the problem. I can't really see what is the active floor and what is not active at the moment. For that, ARCHLine has a very, very good tool with which you can filter down how you want to show things. Let me just turn on the visibility now. I go to the settings, graphics, and here you can decide how you want to display the visible but inactive floors. There are several choices here. You can have a replacement color, a halftone, or original colors of the floor. So imagine this. You are working on the loft floor and you want to see the floor below it, but you don't want to see it in full color. You just want to have it in a halftone. Let me just close it. So if I now turn on the visibility of the floor below me, then I see this very nice halftone. So this is a very clever way of showing what's underneath, but you see you cannot select it and modify it. Now, what happens if I want to make the this floor, the first floor, with a replacement color? Let me just demonstrate that real quick. So it should be a replacement color, and I think the color should be something very visible. This bluish would be fine. I'm going to revert that back because I'm not really fond of this bluish color. I'm just going to go back to halftone, but that's the way you can define that. So I'm just going to go to halftone. Okay, now, that being said, what I have to do, I have to select the slab, and now I have to align the slab's edges to this part. So I'm just going to highlight the side, click offset, and just snap to the edge here, and snap over there. Now this means that I have 2 additional nodes I do not need anymore. So I'm just going to click on them, delete node, and delete the other node. And there we go. Now we are ready to create the roof. And for the roof, this is a very, very exciting topic because the roof comes with a very elaborate roof editor. Let me just show you. I think it's better if I show you instead of explaining it. So when you go with roofs, you have a list of predefined styles you can work with. And that's what we are going to do first. I'm just going to create an open gable. Just click, and just pull the roof. This is not going to be the final roof we are working with. This is just for demonstration purposes. So if I select that, I see that the roof is created, and the good thing about that is that you can go into the properties and select the roof style into a very elaborate one. Let's see, a complex roof. I think this would be good. Here you go. So you can see that the roof comes with, let me just change the representation. The roof comes with many different structural elements. Eaves purlins, middle purlins, rafters, color beams. So all these things you can customize. We are not going to use them at the moment because we are looking at a conceptual stage. But nevertheless, it's important to know that the software is able to create and distribute these elements based on regulations that you submit. So let me just delete that for a second, because we are going to go with another tool, which is an automated tool. Now the automated roof is able to find a rectangle, a polygon, and based on that you're going to have a customized roof shape, and that's what we are doing now. I'm just clicking on the edges where I want the roof to go, like that. Click, enter, and the roof is created. Now I'm just trying to align it so you can see how it's going to go and how it's going to look like. Consistent color would show us what we need. So this is a very conceptual, basic roof. No structural elements, just the layers themselves. Couple of things I have to define here. First of all, you can define where the roof is going to be positioned from. So you see on this diagram that there are several criteria based on which you can position the roof. I'm going to pick the C value, which is going to be the distance between the slab and the roof itself, which is going to be -300. And the next thing I have to clarify is the texture. I don't really like that for this particular project. I want to have the same whitish material for the side and for the bottom, and that's what I do here. I'm just going to go to the folder in which I have all the textures that I'm using in the model right now. Click bright white here, and also here, update, and now it looks the way it should be. Now, next thing, I have to change the roof tiles. I don't like this brownish. This is not suiting my purposes, so I'm just going to go to roof tiles. Now, ARCHLine is able to draw individual roof tiles. The reason I'm not using them right now is because we are at a conceptual stage. If you make the software to draw every single roof tile, then the result would be very high quality, but it might take longer, and I don't want to keep you that long. So I'm just going to go to the simple representation, and I'm changing the texture using the paint bucket, and I'm using this roof blind code. If you don't have this texture in your quick jump list, then you just click on this plus icon and look for roof blind, and here we go. And I also have to change the ridges and the valleys. Okay, so this is starting to look like the way I want it, but there are a couple of things I have to modify. For instance, the pitch and shape. Now, this is the menu where you can define the roof's sides and their pitches one by one. So, for instance, if I want to say that all the roof planes, most of them at least, they have the inclination of 25 degrees, then I just click apply for all planes, and then all the roof planes are going to be with the same inclination. But I have to change that for this roof plane and that one, because they have a different inclination, and that is 35 degrees here and another 35 over there. So there's that. Now, another thing I have to change is this side of the roof is not there. I have to turn this into a gable end, and the only thing I have to do, I click on the roof plane, click gable end, update, and my roof is over here. So that's very good. Let's accept it, and there's that. So the roof is done. There's a couple of things I have to fine-tune, namely, there's a huge gap over here, so that I have to amend, and also there are gaps around the roof. So we're still not done with this. So let's go back to the floor plan. Let us investigate how do we create a firewall. So how do we end up with a wall piece which is actually covering the hole that we don't need? So for that, here's what we do. We select the roof, and now I select the roof planes, and I offset the roof planes back here, because I want I want one roof piece to go over here. So that's what I'm doing on this side as well. Offset it back. Okay. Next task. I have to have one wall piece to cover this big gap over here. So I'm just going to select the wall which is just under my my roof. And I'm just going to go copy objects to the second floor. Here we go. Let me just go to the 3D so that way you can see better what I'm doing. This wall has to be sort of customized because there's a gap over here and it's not high enough. So I'm just going to select the wall and I have to change the base elevation, which according to my cheat sheets should be -300. And the total height would be 4,500. There you go. And also, let's first amend these gaps over here. So let me just go back to the 2D. Actually, working with ARCHLine is all about jumping back and forth between 2D and 3D. Most things you can do in either views, I mean, but use whichever is more comfortable. For instance, now, for me, it's more comfortable to work in 2D, but this you can do also in the 3D. Okay, the task at hand is, I want this roof to be cut, I mean, I want this wall to be cut like this, but how do I do that? I need to have some kind of reference. Meanwhile, I just received a question about how to create roof gutter and rain downspouts. I'm going to demonstrate that. Next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be that. So what I need is some kind of sketching or drafting aid based on which I can create this shape. And that's what I'm doing now. So let's talk about representation styles. If I go to the 3D and activate the header, I can change between the image and vector drawing representations. If I go with vector drawing, I see that the lines would be visible in this kind of wireframe setup. This is still not a line drawing, so you can select the elements and you see that they are still roofs and walls and such. But now I can pick up this part of the drawing, hit Ctrl+C, pick a reference point, go to the 2D and paste this drawing element, and now I ended up with a line drawing. Why would I need that? That's because I can now use this line drawing for additional sketching, and that's what I'm going to do now. So here's what I have to do. I have to make this wall to get this shape, and for that I need to do some additional sketching. I go to the drafting menu, and here's where you can find all the familiar two-dimensional drafting tools which you know and love in other CAD software as well, but you are going to love them here. So first I need to have a line as a sort of helping snapping point, which I can do either by clicking on line and drawing the line or just typing in line. That's another shortcut. So that's trick number 4, I think. And type in 500. There you go. So now I have a line over there. Next thing I have to do, I have to select the wall line and offset this one, sorry, go with offset all and select out. Let me just try it again. Let me just quickly redo this because one thing I need to do is not appearing over here. So let me just redo this whole thing again. So let me just go back to image view, go to, oh yes, I know what I was doing wrong. First I have to define the view itself, because if I'm not doing that, it's not going to be orthogonal and it's going to be inaccurate. So now let me just go to vector drawing. Oh, here we go. Lines are much clearer now, so that's what you have to do. Make sure you always fix the view, otherwise you're going to have a difficult time. So Ctrl+C, go to the 2D, paste down the drawing, and now what we did before, we're just going to go line 500, and selecting this line I can offset it upwards, offset all, offset it. Now the problem is that now I have this kind of extra nodes that I don't really need, and I can amend that with this very handy tool, delete between points. Just click the lines that you don't need and they are going to be deleted. Next task, I want to make this line to reach this point, because ultimately this is the kind of shape I want to reach. So how do I do that? I go with the connections, the T and L connections, only this time I'm not going to connect walls, I'm going to connect lines. Select one element, select the other one, and they are going to be connected together. Now, last thing, I have to get this shape. You can do it two ways. You can either delete the elements you don't need and then you end up with the shape that you actually need, or you can just go with the polyline tool and just very quickly resketch what you have It's just 5 points altogether, so it's not a big deal. And you end up with this shape. So let me just pick it up. And here we go. Oh, there's one line missing, so I'm just going to add that too. Okay, so that's what I actually need. This I don't need anymore, so I'm just going to highlight, delete. And now the task is that I have to make this wall piece to follow this shape, which I can do by clicking on the wall. Again, use the quick jump list if you don't find the element you're looking for. And go to the menu and go to reshape and add whole profile. Now, what's happening over here? What is actually happening is that now the software tells me that this is how your wall actually looks like. Tell me how you want to reshape that. So I'm just going to position this profile, superimpose it onto the shape that I have created. And I'm just going to go with close loop and click on this area. And then the software tells me that this is the new shape of the wall. Let's see how that looks like in the 3D. Oh, that's exactly what we were looking for. So you see that that's a nice firewall. You can have a more elaborate shape than that, but that's just the basics. So let me just highlight this wall and change the middle material to have it as a bright white element. That's right. Okay, one other thing is missing is there's a gap. So wind is going to go in there if I don't do something. So I'm just going to go back to the 2D. By the way, quick tip. If you, and that's trick number 5, I think. If you select the profile you used before, you can right click and you can continue to add. So if you want to change the shape any further, you can do that right here, but I'm not going to do that now. How do I amend the gap between the roof and the slab? I just have to select the slab and offset it just a bit. So offset it outwards, and that way the gap is going to be gone. So let me just do that real quick. It's just a few seconds and we'll be done with this as well. And then we can go to deal with rain gutters. So there you go. The gap is now gone. One thing is what I made as a mistake. The valley is not colored. So let me just select the roof and go to the roof tiles. Go to the valley. And here we go. So it's nice now. It's all having the same kind of grayish color. Okay, next thing, we have to add the roof, the rain gutter or downspouts as well. So let's see how that is done. Now, the rain gutters, they are created with an automated tool, just like many other things in ARCHLine. So let me just go to the building menu and go to the roof gutter menu and just select the roof plane itself. And now the roof is going to be tracing out how the gutter should look like. So that's something that you can obviously customize. So if you're not, satisfied with, let me just open this up. If you're not satisfied with the shape, you can customize that. But for now, I think it aligns fairly nicely. So why does it look like this? It's because of the section profile that is selected. ARCHLine.XP comes with a set of section profiles you can use for these purposes. I think the gutter section.pro is going to be just fine, so I'm just going to use that. Color is not good, so I'm just going to go to the paint bucket and add a new color, G370. If you don't find it in this palette, you just have to go to the menu and find it over there. Okay, here's one problem. There is a red line under, or rather in, the gutter, and that shows where the gutter is going to be positioned, and that's something that I can fine-tune. And I have to do that, otherwise it's not going to go to the right place. I'm just going to change where the reference line is going to be positioned. I just managed to put it on the other side, so let me just again do that. There you go. And by hitting OK, the rain gutter would be created. I'm not going to accept this yet because I have to add 2 downspouts, which I can do by clicking on the downspout tab. And here I see a green sort of preliminary path which shows how the downspout is going to look like, and for that I have certain values I have to comply with. So first of all, the downspout is going to be in length 5,900 millimeters long, so it's going to be much longer than I originally positioned it. And there's going to be 2 downspouts, and I know their position. I know how far they are from the ending point. So I know that this downspout from the right hand side, it should be 5,580 millimeters. Hit the plus icon, and the downspout is created. Let's have another one by clicking on the plus icon and add its position from the left hand side, which is going to be 7,800. It's very nice. So I'm just going to hit OK. And the downspout is now created. If I made any mistake with the sketching, for example, that whole scenario is way too high, then I just click on the marker over here, start moving the downspout downwards, the rain gutter downwards, and add in the new value, 100 millimeters downwards, or maybe 200. I think that wouldn't hurt. 150, I think that would be better. So there you go. That's how you create it. Now, how do I fine tune this? You can select the element. Let me just go to the bigger view, and you can modify the path. You can add new nodes, you can move the downspout, you can add an ending, so you can all customize how this downspout looks like. So that's how you can customize it, but for now we are going to be satisfied with what we have. Next, I'm going to create 4 solar panels. This building is going to be very environmentally conscious, so I need to have 4 panels over here, and that's a very good pretext for me actually to show you the MEP toolsets, what we have in the software. So let's go to the design center, to objects, and let me find the solar panels. I have written out the name of the elements we are looking for. We have to go to objects, the MEP content, and we have to go with solar, and I have the HVAC solar heating battery at a sun, which I have to position over here. So let's do that. Jumping into 2D, I'm dragging and dropping the solar panel, and I'm placing it as an object, placing it, let's say, over here. Now what happened over here? The element is horizontal. That's not what I want. I want it to have the same inclination as the roof itself. I can do that by going to the properties and saying tilting ahead should be 25 degrees. And if I do that, the element is rotated, only this time it's going to be pushed into the roof, so I'm just going to elevate it. Oh, by the way, if you don't want to snap to anything, because now the element is going to be snapped to whatever I'm hovering the mouse over, you can turn off the snapping with the magnet bar. Just like this. So I'm just going to, don't forget that this is a conceptual drawing, so I don't have to be too accurate at this point, but I have to be efficient, so I'm just going to turn this back on. Now I want to have 3 additional copies of this panel. How do I do that? Obviously I could pick it up and I could say move a copy and make additional elements, but instead I'm going to use the edit, duplicate, and array tool, which once I have created an element, hit enter, I say how many additional parts I need, which is 3. Click the starting point of where I want to copy the elements from, and start dragging my mouse. And if I know for a fact how far I want to copy this to, then I'm just going to add 3,600. And there you go, you have nice solar panels. You can have even more, but they are nicely complying with the inclination of this roof. So that's actually what we wanted to achieve. Now, next thing I haven't touched upon yesterday is how to create columns. Now, columns go into 2 categories. We are going to create a few decorational columns and a few strategic or structural ones. And let's see how that's done. First of all, I know that I have a staircase on the first floor, or the ground floor if you are coming from from Europe, and first floor if you are from the US, obviously. I want to look in, but I can't do it because I'm still in axonometry. Remember, we covered yesterday, so if you want to jump into your model, you have to switch into a perspective view, which allows you to drag your viewport and go into the model. And I'm just going to add the view over here, making sure that I can jump back here. Now, I want to have a railing made out of columns. How do I do that? I go to the building and column tool. Before I place down anything, I just right click, go to property, and fine tune how my railing should look like. Again, I turn to my cheat sheet, which is telling me that this railing, this column should be 100 millimeters times 50 millimeters. There you go. Or actually I could even switch it up because I want to do it like this, and I could rotate this, but I think it's easier if I just say that the width is 50 and the height is 100 millimeters. Okay, I'm not fond of the material, so I'm just going to change it to something else. Let me look for the the proper material. This one should be good for the solid, and this one should be good for the surface. Okay. The base offset from the floor I have to crank up to 675, and the height should be, well, 3000 millimeters is not good enough because I want these columns not only to reach the ceiling but also go to the first floor. So I'm just going to crank this up to 7500. And also there's a rule governing the roof slab cutting, meaning that the slab would cut the column. I don't want that because I want the column to go straight up to the other floor, not being stopped by the slab. So I'm just going to select that. Okay, here is a difficulty. I know for a fact that my DWG drawing used to have the position of the columns, but now I can't use it because I turned this off. So I'm just going to go to the layer manager and turn on the visibility of the layers with which I can work with. So here are now my tiny markers based on which I can position the columns, and that's what I'm doing now. So let's click columns, which interestingly and fortunately remembered my settings. I'm just going to click, and the column is now positioned. Nice. Now I want to have 12 additional copies. I'm not going to, you know, click and manually copy them, because you not only have to work efficiently, but you also have to be fast. So you just click on the column, and I'm not saying that you should be lazy with your drafting, but you have to be efficient. So duplicate, array, say I want to have 12 copies, pick the starting point, drag the mouse, go all the way to the end where the last is located, hit OK, and now the railing is created. So this way you can create a very nice looking element, which, if I'm not mistaken, is going all the way to the roof. I'm going to show you that next time when we are going to create the sections. Next task is I have, maybe you have already seen it in the 2D, 1, 2, and 3 columns which are structural ones. Creating them is the same deal, so I'm just going to use the same tool set, but they are going to be a bit different because they are going to have a tiny attachment at the top, and that's what we are doing now. So going back to the building, column, right click, property, and you see the software remembered the last settings, which I have to override. So now I'm just going to say this column is the width is 300 millimeters and the height should be 200. The base offset has to be changed too. I think the 200, yeah, I think this is good. The base offset should be, instead of 75, it should be minus 200. Why minus, you ask? That's because we have a slanted slab, a ramp over here, and if I leave it as 0, then it's going to, the column is going to float over my ground, so minus 200, and the height should be, the value is 2700. The material. Now, I don't find anything in here which I like, so I'm just going to go to the main menu and look for stone wall. And I think stone wall 045 would be just the one I need, so I'm just going to change this here as well. Okay, slab roof cutting, I can enable that, but at the moment I don't need that. So I could do that. Last time I didn't need that. Now it makes no difference, so I'm just going to hit OK. Am I done with this? No. Let me show you why. Because if I position my column, I see that there's a gap over here. So how do I amend that? I think the height is not good as well. Yes, mistakenly I wrote 2700 should be the one. So I'm just going to hit OK. Now there's a gap. And let me show you a very nice decorational element you can add to this column so as to bridge that gap and make it a bit more interesting, because otherwise it's way too brutalist. So I'm just going to go with this menu, cutout, recesses, attachment. Now what does this do? You can add additional holes and extra extruding, protruding elements. Insert new is going to create a hole over here. Now what happened? What happens here is that the software creates an additional element to this column based on a shape that you define. The shape in question is a circle. This is not good. I have to change that to another, I think a rectangle profile should be good. Simple rectangle is good. Let me just accept that. So now I have this kind of cutout. So this should not be a cutout. This should be an attachment. And the attachment should be at the top of this element. So the way I do that is I go with certain settings, which I have to, again, just quickly see from my jump list. So the distance from the reference point should be minus 150. And it's gone now because it's actually in the middle. So that's what I wanted. And the thickness should be 100 millimeters. Now it's starting to look the way it has to, but it has to go at the top. So I'm just going to say that I want to have this element at the top. And the last thing I have to do, I have to move it into that direction, which if I know well, it's going to be, oh, I think it's just 100. So minus 100. Nice. So I have an extra attachment, which is sort of breaking up this whole form into tiny shapes. You could obviously do this with extra elements, maybe another column, but then it would not behave as one column. Before I finish, I have to change the surface material of this element into something else. I think the concrete 3 would be, again, there to help me. So there you go. The solid material should be concrete 3 as well. And there we go. So now, the interesting part is that if I select the column, it's going to be one single element, retaining all the properties of a column, while if you would create this with multiple elements, then it would not behave as one. So again, what we have to do, we have to pick up this column and make a copy. What do I do if I have a reference over here? And I want to make sure that the column is actually positioned the way I want it. I just have to click on the side or the edge, and then the software picks up this column with one of the edges, move it to the other symbol, just hit. Oh, sorry, I moved it and did not copy it. So that was a mistake from my part. So I'm just going to go move a copy from and copy it there. There's an extra copy here, which I have to add. So I'm just going to go move a copy from and position it here. First, I have to rotate it. So I'm just clicking on the marker, rotate 90 degrees, doesn't matter which direction, and I'm just moving it there. Are we done? No. And the reason why we are not done is because this column is not reaching its height. Why is that? What happens if I realize that this column is being pushed into the ground? So if I compensate for the base elevation, then this column should reach its height, right? Well, not really. And that's rightfully so. Let me demonstrate. If I go to the settings and I crank up the base offset to 0, I see that the offset is now, you know, changed, but the column still doesn't reach its goal. Why is that? It's because the column is trying to comply, you know, follow the changes of your design. If it would change its height every now or then you wouldn't be able to know what's going on your drawing. So you have to manually change that if you want to do that. Otherwise, the software is not going to be there by itself to override your decision, and that would not be that good either. So I'm just going to crank it up, and now it reaches the way it should go. So we came a long way actually. We created the roof elements, the rain gutters, columns, and also these nice economically and environmentally conscious elements. Now, next time we are going to go one step further, and we are going to go with documentation, creating sections, elevations, labels, room and area markers, and all kinds of things which you can eventually print. Before I actually look at that, before we wrap up today's session, we are going to go with the questions that you have asked. So let's see a few questions. In the beginning I already answered a few, but let's go with the questions I have. Okay, so if we have the maximum height of a roof, how do we put that? You mean you have a regulation meaning how high the roof should be over the slab? If I understand that correctly, then this is the solution for that. So these are the laws, the rules based on which you can position the roof. This is how you can set up where things should go. Okay, here's another question. We usually have a cornice just below the roof. In fact, 99% the cornice is the edge of the slab. How do we draw that cornice? Well, it's actually a very good question. I'm not sure if I can do this with the gutter in the way, but maybe I can temporarily delete the gutter. I don't really like to delete things during the webinar because that would show that you have to get rid of things, but anyway. So if you go to the interior menu, you have a sweep tool, and the sweep is actually able to highlight a 3D face, and then you would be able to draw things on top of that face, like this. Like here. I'm not going to do it all the way, but this would get you the idea. So, okay, so what happens here is that you have one path along which a shape is dragged. Now, if you go to the tab where you can define. Okay, this is going to be very anachronistic, but you get the idea. So if you select the profile with which you want to fill this path, then you are going to end up with this. I'm just going to hit accept, but just for a second, because this is not going to good look on this drawing, but you would get the idea. See? So that's how you can do that. I'm just going to undo this because I'm not proud of my creation. Okay, there's another question. Is it possible the columns, the slabs, and the beams to insert to a static program so we have the geometry of the building? For that, there are other software solutions on the market. ARCHLine is able to export its data into IFC, DWG, and other formats. If you have a statics or a structural calculation software, then that would be the way to proceed. So thank you very much for the questions you have submitted. Like I said, next time we are going to proceed with the documentation part, which is not going to be that graphic, but this is going to show you how to create the basic parts of your documentation. And now this actually wraps up the modeling part. So the first two parts we are done with. So we are not going to model any further, but we are going to look at documentation and eventually we are going to look at visualization. And in order to thank you for sticking around for that long, I have a very tiny surprise for you, which is one of the projects I created a few years back, actually. I mentioned in the beginning that I enjoy using ARCHLine just for these fun projects, which have no sense whatsoever, but sometimes you have to experiment with the software to create additional things, and you would learn some other things. I'm a hobbyist, so you have to be easy on me, but here's a project I created which has nothing to do with architecture. This is actually how I modeled my guitar. So enjoy this tiny video and see you next time.